Welcome back to Powering the Future, where we dive into Namibia's most exciting developments in the energy sector. I am delighted to have you join us for this episode, where we focus on the opportunities emerging in Namibia's rapidly growing oil and gas industry. And with recent offshore discoveries attracting global attention, Namibia is on the brink of becoming a major player on the international energy stage. In this episode, we will explore the key drivers behind this growth, the investment landscape, the regulatory support guiding industry practices, and how Namibia is balancing economic growth with environmental responsibility. Our guests will help us understand the impact this sector will have on our economy and what the future holds for oil and gas in Namibia. So let's get started as we uncover the opportunities within Namibia's oil and gas sector, an industry that is truly powering our future. Well, again, I just want to welcome you, Maggie, to this discussion where we are talking about the energy landscape. And maybe just to start off by saying, as we know, the topical discussion these days, not only in Namibia but globally, is about energy. Especially when you think about the kind of energy landscape on the African continent, where we all know that we are really struggling to energize the continent. And even when people start to talk about the energy transition that we all know that we need to embrace in terms of managing the climate change, the question that most Africans ask is to say, but if we're talking about energy transition, exactly what are we transitioning from? Because what we do not have is energy. Now, in Namibia, Namibia is now basically is trending in terms of energy, specifically in terms of the recent oil discovery that was discovered not long ago, really making us to potentially be a key player on the energy landscape, not only on the continent but probably also globally, and the public generally, of course, they follow what discussion is all about. Yes, they know there's a discovery, but I think it's important for us to, in a way, really, put all things in perspectives to make people understand exactly what it means when you got oil discovery, what it doesn't mean, because if we're not careful, everybody start to think, oh, now we got oil discovery and therefore all our problems are solved. Mm-hmm. So maybe to start with you, Mali, as you have followed the news of the discovery since then, and again as an economist, where you stand, and also from what you hear, what you have been following, what do you think people right now understand what this oil discovery could mean for us? And also probably, it's always a good news, but I'm sure there are also people who've got some questions to be asked or maybe concern to be addressed. But where you are, what is that what you're hearing that we really need to pay attention to what people are thinking about this oil discovery?
No, thank you very much, Tom, for that question. I think there's so many information and insight that is coming out from the society regarding these new discoveries, and like you said, what this discovery means a lot of things from different kind of people. But for me, really, this development has once again confirmed that Namibia is indeed a gem on the African continent, and indeed so on the world. Namibia has been known for having all of these natural resources, but very little attention was paid to in terms of oil. And this discovery has just added yet another ingredient into what Namibia can really offer to the world. Now, this discovery comes at a time where other countries that have been endowed with oil have really progressed, and some have not progressed, and it has caused a lot of mixed reaction. And now, when people heard about this discovery, they started thinking all of these things. Will Namibia go through the direction of other countries that have discovered oil, and instead of progressing, they digressed? And others are like, wow, this is an opportunity of a lifetime for Namibia. But from where I am sitting, I think this discovery presents massive opportunities. We may not be able to use this discovery to solve all our problems, but it is really a step in the right direction. And I'm saying so because, remember, for a very long time, even in our Vision 2030, it was energy sector was already identified as one of those enabling sectors. And of course, we didn't discover oil yet, but with this discovery, it really puts the energy sector in its rightful position. There are so many social, economic benefits that will be derived from this. And I think that is the context from which many people are supposed to see it and are beginning to look at this. Of course, there are some little concerns, but these are concerns that will be addressed as we develop the sector from the regulatory point of view, from the financial point of view. When the dust has settled, I'm sure all of these things will be very much clear.
Yeah. But maybe for Maggie, as the you are not a stranger to this. I mean, in fact, you are the Petroleum Commissioner. The discovery that we were talking about today is, I don't think it's just something that happened by itself. So, because we have been exploring for oil and gas, since way back at independence. In fact, we also know that, like, the Kudu gas that has been discovered, they've been discovered way back in the 70s. But maybe people might think, well, this is just something that happens. And I'm sure they have some. We did have some sort of strategy programs that led to this discovery. Maybe just as by way of explanation, what is that suddenly make it possible for some investors, like now the ones who made this discovery, somehow they found it okay for them to come to Namibia, do the exploration, and eventually they do their discovery. It's not something that just happens. I'm sure there has been some activities that you, especially as a Petroleum Commissioner, that we've been involved in, trying to make sure that we do get people to come who can actually start doing this with us. What is that? What you maybe can share with the public how we got to this point?
Yeah, that's correct, Honorable. In terms of the journey to a discovery hasn't been a very smooth and straightforward one, and most definitely not a quick one. Namibia has started exploration even before independence in 1974, when the first company came to do the exploration in Namibia through Chevron, and they discovered the Kudu gas field, which was the first well that was drilled in Namibia pre-independence. So with that discovery, it has made it possible for us to know for definite that in Namibia we have an active working petroleum system. And that has been the input of energy and motivation for the country to know that knowing the geology and of the oil industry and how it works, it's impossible for you to have only one discovery or one element of a petroleum system working in one basin and not into the other. So because of knowing that, the Ministry of Mines and Energy and through the Office of the Petroleum Commissioner and the Directorate of Petroleum Affairs, we have therefore continuously promoted the petroleum potential of the country. And this, we haven't been doing it single-handedly as a Namibian government, but right from the onset of the ministry, from the establishment of the ministry, we have realized the value that comes into creating synergies with international players in terms of explorers and companies that are responsible for the acquisition of data, as we've realized very early on in terms of the value of the data, that in terms of how it can then open the petroleum potential of the country. So with that realization, cooperations has been ongoing right from the onset. We used to have a bidding licensing regime, and we realize also that the oil industry, in terms of the market and the interest and the appetite, depends very much on the financial market and the availability of capitals to be able to be deployed into the sector. And that's why even our licensing and legislation regime, we made it flexible enough that it can allow for companies to be able to come in when the market is responding favorably. So through that, we used to have a combination of bidding round, and at a later stage, we also open up to what we call an open licensing regime, so that we allow flexibility in terms of companies to be able to bring in their investment into to explore. But also, with that being said, mid 90s, after we have drilled a few dry wells, we also realized that availability of data to the market and to the general industry is key in terms of us unlocking the full potential, especially of the onshore, of the offshore basins. We were seeing signatures here and there, but we needed to then have a regional perspective view of the whole basin and the whole offshore, so that we can then take it take the analysis from a regional perspective, and then be able to zone in into specific blocks in terms of their petroleum potential. So in realizing that, the Ministry, the Directorate of Petroleum Affairs, together with NAMCO, then also open up to the idea of having multi-client data acquisition programs, whereby the technical data that is required to be able to assess the petroleum system and the elements, we didn't only leave it to the license holders themselves, but we also went into cooperation with service provider, seismic companies that can come in and acquire data over a wide range of area that becomes multi-client, so that it makes it easier for companies when they are coming in to not to start from scratch and be able to do analysis directly.
Okay, but I know as a commissioner, you're probably going to have lots of to say about this. But I think let's look at the, as I said, you have to attract people to come into the country. That investment to come in the country. And generally people say, well, investment will probably go to where that investment can attract a decent return on that investment. And I'm sure the companies that then decided to come and invest, do the explorations, I'm sure they would then probably figure that in Namibia, the environment is attractive enough for them to be able to do that. And this is important, because if you do not have that, nobody may come then to actually come and invest in your economy. But what exactly would you think when people say the environment must be conducive? People want to have some incentives, but do you think there's a chance then that because you want to attract as much investors as possible, do you think there could be a chance that you may lose certain opportunities simply by making this environment such then that the investors come obviously because of the attractiveness of the environment, but maybe somehow at your own disadvantage? Anyway, people talk about the race to the bottom, where everybody wants to say, oh, come to my country and therefore I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Do you think there's a chance then that if you go on that, that you may end up losing some benefits simply because you want your environment to be attractive enough to the investors? And this is probably I want to start with Mali again. What as an economists always talk about this. Investment, capital, that.
Yeah.
So, is there any chance then that you could go on this track of having the race to the bottom in terms of to attract investors?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Before Commissioner comes in, I think it's a very important consideration. And part of the reason why this journey has been a very long one. Now imagine if Kudu discovery, if Kudu as a person, this would say he was born in 1974. How old would that guy be right now?
I guess you were not born then, were you?
I was not born.
Okay, so
okay, he will be more than 50 years. Now,
it is I was born.
Yes.
Yes.
So 50 years is long enough
Yeah.
time to study somebody and understand that person. Why am I saying this? I'm looking at, since the discovery of Kudu, the country has developed frameworks in anticipation of this, what we have today. The Petroleum Act came into being. Various supporting legislation came into being, understanding, and this has been a process of thinking critically with international cooperation. So I would say that from a legislative framework side of things, I think Namibia is well positioned, and that is why investors will not think twice to come. Now remember, Namibia is not the only country that is competing for investors. So there have to be some form of give and take. One of the key benefit that a country can benefit from attracting a lot of companies is revenue to the state. Now, this revenue to the state comes in various forms. It comes in form of loyalties, it comes in form of corporate tax and stuff like that. Now, investors look at countries or jurisdiction that offers favorable rates or tax regimes. Now, Namibia has to compete. Now, at some point, we will have to think of lowering some of this so that we become attractive. Now, when you lower, you lose a bit. But a short period, a short-term pain for a longer-term gain is better.
Yeah.
And so, as a country, we must be willing and be ready to lose a little bit of what we could get so that we get more for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I'm looking at this in terms of really having a sustainable process. So, investors are looking at this. And another key area, and I like the commissioner what she said, is the rich database that we have. And a lot of investment have gone into flying around, collecting all this seismic data that is available to investors. And when they do the comparison, I think we come tops because we have all this information available, coupled with what they can clearly see. So to define a conducive environment, I think loosely you can say a conducive environment for a business person is an environment that he can make where he can achieve his business goals.
Yeah. So, in other words, really, what is important then is to say, as long as the investment is mutually beneficial,
Yes.
or at least to be seen to be mutually beneficial, so that the host country can be look at it and say, well, we are getting something out of it. The investor is also getting something out of it. But not to structure in such a way that there's one party that seems to be getting more out of it than the other parties. And I think that's a very important thing, that actually we make sure at least, yes, we need to have an environment that is conducive, but it has to be, I think, mutually beneficial to both parties. But let's talk about the earlier issues you talk about when you say the questions are now probably being asked to say, now we've got the discovery, kind of, promising some prosperity is coming, and people start to think about it. Money is coming. But you also say, look, there are countries also that have made this discovery. They got oil. But actually, it did not really go to benefit the society as such. It might even just have created some turmoil, some uneasiness, some issues within that society. And therefore, there is something that we need to be careful about to make sure then that this discovery, it really goes to addressing some of our pressing needs, like we talk about unemployment, we talk about inequality, and therefore there are certain things that we really need to be careful how do we handle it. So Maggie, what would be some of those things which you would say, look, and I know we have seen some countries, some examples, some of the things that you need to start to get it right from the beginning. Otherwise, if you try to address it in the middle of the process, you may struggle. But some of the things that you really need to actually start from the beginning already.
Yeah. Right. I think as Mali have said, for us it comes from where do we strike a balance, especially then when you are trying to create a win-win situation. It's very important that you look at the needs of the host country and also the needs of the investors and the financials that are coming in. And for us to strike that balance comes within the structure of the legislative tools that we have put in place. Uh, the most important one, whereby also goes together with creating a conducive environment for us, is a the tax regime and how we have created it. We have created it in such a way that it provides stability and predictability to the investors when they are coming in, but it also as a progressive tax regime, we have also built in an element that we have some elements that we can be able to negotiate based on a project-to-project basis. For example, the issues of the additional profit tax. It makes it possible for us to be able to reap the benefit or the revenue that's coming from each project, depending on the profitability of the project. Let's say if a project is really highly profitable, you have a mechanism for that profitability to be shared with the Namibian people at that stage. While that is being said, we are also then ensuring that the needs of the people on the ground should always be considered, and there should be room for it to be taken into consideration, and for their needs to be part and parcel of the designs of the projects as they're coming. You have marginal projects, you have highly profitable projects, and our regime has enabled that to happen. And with that, we have then right now, especially with the new discovery, also realized from the learning of other countries that have come before us that the element of local content and local participation is a key ingredient in ensuring that the industry contribute positively to the economic growth of a host country, but it's also the best tools in ensuring that the people participate. We as a country are also signatory to the Global Accelerator, whereby we are mandated to create employment for our people, but very social just employment. And this you can only do it by ensuring that the industry that you have, the oil and gas industry, contribute to the industrialization of your country, so that then the people can participate, not just by providing the employment, but also by creating industry that then will provide the offset or the spin-off, not while we are waiting for the revenues that's coming from the tax and the royalties that are coming. The whole economy system need to work and need to be moving towards with the maturity of the industry. And with the local content policy, the way we have also designed it, we have created a policy that doesn't put very stringent measures on the sector, as we know that the sector is still maturing, and we have made it also in such a way that we are going to, as the industry matures, also then our participation in terms of, is it in terms of local fabrication, is it in terms of local job creation, is it in terms of just ensuring that skills and knowledge are transferred, have been incorporated with the industry as it grows. And I think for me, with all these elements, if you then put them together, we are able to take care of not only the profitability of the project in terms of creating value for the investors and having a return of investment on their investment that they have made in the country, but we also have created an opportunity then for the Namibian people to be part and parcel of this industry and have the satisfaction that the industry that they are growing is making positive changes to their lives as on a daily basis.
And I think that's probably one of the key when local individuals participation in people in Namibian who feel like, okay, well, there's an oil and gas industry, I'm impacted by it, and you get these questions as if somehow people feel like I can only see that I am being impacted by this industry if I'm getting something out of it directly. So either maybe I'm an employee there, or maybe I got a business that supply there. That's how somehow people feel. That's the only way I can say I'm participating. But surely, with the participation or being impacted can only not be directly. As you say, if we then create a sector that can create some other sub-industry to supply the industry, that in itself actually impacts people. And even people who might not necessarily actually be employed or providing service in that. But the fact then that you are going to get the revenue from these things, the revenue that goes to the central pool, that where we all get our revenue from, that will be the same revenue or money that will build schools, that will build clinics, that will pay the police officer, that will pay all the civil servant. So, but somehow people want to think, I can only feel that I'm participating if I'm directly impacted. So, and therefore there's really a good need for us to continuously actually tell the people to look, there are various ways in which can be impacted by this sector, and not necessarily by directly being, for example, employed. And therefore, the need for that information is very, very critical.
Yeah. Just on that one, Honorable Minister, and I just want to add on to what Commissioner have said. You see, there are two words that really summarizes the fears and uneasiness that comes from the discovery of a resource like oil. And we are very fortunate as Namibia because we have got a long period of learning from other countries how to navigate and circumvent those challenges. The first word that comes up is called resource scarce. I am sure in all your discussion, this word always comes up, resource scarce. And another word is called the Dutch disease. Now, I thought the Dutch disease was some disease coming from Dutch. But what this means is resource scarce is when the discovery of a natural resource leads to undesirable outcomes. We have seen countries that have discovered oil falling into conflicts, civil conflicts, not necessarily as created by external forces, but civil within. And that stems from the fact that other quarters in one country feels they are not benefiting, and then there is conflict. Now that's that discovery is a case.
Just there, Mali.
Yes.
You are hitting something. So which means people feel like, okay, well, if I'm not benefiting from this, then therefore somebody's doing it, and people feel like there are only few people who are actually benefiting, either because they are closer to the minister or they are family to this and they like that, and people start feeling like. But so how do you then address that feeling?
And this is where an appropriate legal framework that speaks to the inclusivity of everyone in the country comes in. We have seen countries that are prosperous because of oil. I can mention Saudi Arabia. They are so prosperous because of inclusivity in the sharing of the resources. The United States, all these big countries. But then there are countries, I'm not going to mention names, who have massive oil discoveries, but because they did not put in that legal perspective to make sure that everyone is included. Look, we do not have to have an oil discovery in Zambezi for the Zambezian to benefit. But there are procedures and processes, like we have a centralized government where all the resources are going into one place and that place get distributed equally. You can avoid all those conflicts.
Okay, but what do you think? What do you think in those countries that is that simply the mismatch of allocating the resources, or somehow this money disappeared? Some people took it for themselves, or what? And this is very, very important because there are also probably people who think like, some people are going to be richer not because they deserve to be rich, because they might have stolen, even they stole the thing.
Yes.
And therefore, for me, the transparency with which you are going to do it, and therefore how to communicate to the people, clearly telling the people how much we are making from this sector and then where it goes. That's very, very important.
Very important.
It's because sometimes, even if it's not real that somebody's taking their money for themselves, but simply because you are not transparent in terms of how you share the information as to exactly where the money is coming from, where it's going.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to be quite clear to say, you know, this must be a transparent process. We know exactly how much money are going to be made from this process, and then where it's going to be used. But let's go to the other issue quickly. I think Maggie mentioned it, the local content. And this issue of the local content, which basically says, you know, we don't only want to, you know, to depend on the taxes that we are going to get from this sector, whether it's now royalties or corporate tax or some other revenue stream. We want to make sure that this sector by itself, you know, start to grow other sectors by, you know, creating supply industry to supply to the sector. Which I think that's the way how the economy is going to benefit much more than just relying on the revenue coming directly from this sector. But there's probably also a catch here. We know that it's one thing to say our own business people, entrepreneurs, must be the one to supply these services to the industry. But we also know right now we probably don't really have sufficient entrepreneurs or business people that can do that. They need to be prepared. They need to be ready.
Yeah.
And therefore, what sort of strategies would you think we really need to start putting in place, either than as policymakers, but also equally from the entrepreneurs' side themselves? Because if you don't have the two getting together, the local content which we think is going to promise that the economy become more complex economy, it might not happen simply because we aren't ready actually to take up the challenge.
Maybe let me take the first shot at that. What we have identified that gap in the market, and the only way you can close it is by building structures and legal framework that is designed to address that. And that's exactly what we have done. Within the local content policy, we didn't just design a framework that only speak and mandating on what needs to be done, but we have also put in place mechanism for building the tools that are required to implement this local content for a successful result into the economy. The first one that we have done is that within the local content policy itself, there's an objective that mandate transfer of skills and knowledge. This means that we recognize that the industry, the petroleum industry, is a very highly specialized industry, and it requires expertise of a certain level. And that mandate for knowledge transfer and skill transfer doesn't only speak to the license holder or the international companies that are coming, but it also gives an obligation to the Namibian people to say you need to skill yourself up to the standard and the requirement of the industry. That's number one. The second one also, the industry, as highly specialized, depends so much on innovation and technology. With the innovation and technology, there is a mandate also for Namibians to embrace that technology and innovation, and make sure that you make it part and parcel of the business, entrepreneurial business that they're developing. But the most important one of all to enable this to happen is that we have also created an objective that mandate for there to be an ability for local financing from the local market. Small and medium enterprises need to be capacitated in terms of financing so that then they can be able to have access to this technology, so that they can then have access to this innovation as it's happening out there, and so that then they can be able to capacitate themselves to be on par with the industry. And as I've said, that the policy, the way we have designed it, it's a progressive policy to say as the industry matures, we as a Namibian government also have then an objective to ensure that we have prepared and we have capacitated our people to mature with the industry and to grow with it, and so that by the time we have been in 20 years into production, we should be able to reach a target where we say Namibians can be able to take this.
And I think therein lies the challenge. So what sort of strategy then will then prepare the people? As I say, you have to have entrepreneurs on the one side and government policy on the other side. And of course, you also got the investors on the other side to make sure that the three gets together to make it this work. But when we did visit some countries and say, look, some of the challenges in these local content issues is where that you end up having local companies, but they are structured in such a way that they never really have the opportunity to grow in such a way that they become big companies that can also then compete with international companies that come in. And therefore, we need to be very careful also to say it doesn't help for us to have a multiplicity of small, little Namibian companies who will never grow to become any sizable. And in other people, actually, people talk about you need also to have a system where you can really grow people who can become the champions, Namibian champions, in terms of them being able to compete with somebody coming from outside. Otherwise, we'll continuously just become smaller companies who always would need to team up with outside companies, which of course from the beginning that's probably what you need, but we need to find a strategy. Where can we grow? How can we grow these companies such that they really grow and be able then to compete with the others? If not, we again gonna, I think, challenge. And I know it's difficult because now every entrepreneur says, look, I got my company, I can grow my companies. But we also know surely that not every company can grow up to that extent. And my worry will be like 20 years later from when you look back, can we say we have now created companies that can stand alone and be able to do what needs to be done as a Namibian company, owned by Namibian people, without necessarily having to rely on a system from outside? I think that's very, very critical as we go forward.
It is. And I like the fact that you mentioned that, because when you look at the local content policy, it is really one of the best. It's, of course, there's some bit of work that needs to be done. But I think it's one of the good initiatives because it's the perfect cure for what is called the Dutch disease. With the Dutch disease is when you have one industry trying to swallow other industries. The whole focus is now on this industry. Now, with what the local content is trying to do is to, number one, ensure the maximization of the local beneficiation along the value chain. Now, what this means is that there will be a local participant at every stage of the value chain. And as you grow longer, as you get closer to the high tech, these companies that have started here are also growing the process. Now, remember, Rome was not built in a day. I've not been to Rome many times, but the first time I was there, I was wow. It
wasn't built in one day. Definitely.
You were like, how did this happen? Well, it happened many, many years ago, piece by piece.
But you have to be consistent.
You have to be
consistent. And have a firm a plan, consistent, but,
Exactly.
I think, Ludi, let me thank you for this discussion. I know there's definitely a lot of things to unpack here, and I hope we're still going to have an opportunity to continuously talk about this. But I really think what I want to end this episode with is to say, yes, we've got this discovery. It can mean something to us, but it can really mean something exactly what we decided to mean for us. But I guess what we want is to make sure that it must be impactful for us. And we need to start off on a good footing to make sure that, we are transparent with what we are doing. We are purposeful in terms of what we want to use the revenue, what we are going to get out of this. And we are also purposeful in terms of trying to really create other sectors that can supply this oil and gas industry. For me, therefore, it means that we need to somehow come up with some agreed principles of how we want to manage this. Principle that all of us as Namibians agree that's how we want to do that. Whether in principle that needs to do with the transparency issues, whether it's principle that needs to be how we need to sustain the environment, whether it's in principle how we need to use the revenue that we're going to come up with. But this is something that we all agree, and therefore it does not matter or shouldn't matter who's the minister today or tomorrow, who's the government, but those are the principles as Namibians that we've embraced, and they will then want to insist that whoever is in charge of that, that's the principle that we want to foster. And I think that way, I think we are going to make sure that this sector is going to really be impactful and meaningful to the economy and to the Namibian people. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise in this.